All right. Welcome, everybody, to your Healthy Self podcast and webinar. This is your host, Cade Archibald, and so excited for today's show. Really cool show. We're going to be diving in with a really cool, interesting colleague of ours, and really excited about this. Before we dive in, want to make sure everyone had an opportunity to jump on our hack, the Health Accelerator course. That was yesterday. Every Wednesday at 4:30 Mountain Time, we have our Health Accelerator course. Challenge this week is, let's see, what was the challenge, Regan? My mind just went blank.
Cade,
I gotta look at my notes.
that means I'm going to have to give you a pink slip.
I'm sorry. So we got fermented foods. So we're doing stuff to help the leaky gut. So we got bone broth, fermented foods, and lightly cook your veggies. So these are all.
And then get rid of all the emulsifiers, processed foods, things you don't know what they are in those labels. Packaged foods, get rid of those.
Eat some real food. So that's everyone's challenge for this week, and forever. That's like an ever challenge, is get rid of processed food. So if you're not part of our hack community or our Health Accelerator course, go to acueastwest.com/hack, HAC. Check that out. Also, today our show is brought to you by The Smart Medicine. If you want some really good high quality supplements that Regan has vetted really well, go to thesmartmedicine.com. Some really cool formulas there. So take a look at that stuff. All right. So today's show, I'm going to hand it over to you, Regan. We got Regan, founder of Go Wellness and founding member of Anodyne Pain and Wellness Clinics, Regan Archibald here, and he's going to be diving into some really cool stuff with Kai Van Bodhi. So excited about this show. Take it away, Regan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cade. So today we're going to be talking about how to show up your best, the integration of Taoist alchemy and modern neuroscience with Kai Van Bodhi. And so I'm so excited about this because I've heard about Kai through a mutual friend, Kyle Gray, who's been a guest on the show many times. And so what we're going to talk about is just some breath work and meditation. And we're going to talk about nootropics, adaptogens. Many of you love the adaptogenic herbs. And then we're going to just show you how you can show up with greater levels of presence. You can bring your true power to any given moment. And so, I'll give you a little background about Kai because you do not want to miss this show, and hurry and text your friends and say, hey, you got to jump on this because this will be literally a transformational experience for you. So who Kai is, he's a pioneer in the field of holistic medicine. He integrates both the ancient alchemy and modern neuroscience into a complete accessible pathway to unlocking human potential. He holds a master's degree in Oriental medicine. He is an artful teacher of meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, and mind-body exercise. After spending 15 years studying with masters in the Far East, learning the language and becoming an insider in traditions often inaccessible to Western students, Kai has been transmitting these ancient technologies infused with modern science to thousands of people in live events, group coaching programs, and one-on-one mentorships. So Kai, it's so good to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you got all these crazy things going on from an outsider perspective. It's like, oh, he does like these meditations and Qigong and these Taoist principles. He's acupuncturist, Oriental medicine doctor. What is it that got you on this side of the world and the Eastern side of the planet and thinking?
Yeah. Wow. There's so many ways to answer that. I mean, an original one that will very much date me is that I remember being really young, like 7 or 8 years old, and I'm in my mom's bedroom. They had a TV, one of those, up in the wall in a big hole. It was no flat screens at that time. And there was some show on starring Shirley MacLaine where she was going on a journey to heal cancer. And she was outside of LA, and this acupuncturist had like a little bamboo thatched roof clinic out behind his house, and he's putting needles in her. And I just remember looking up, I remember being so interested. You know, it was like a drama, so I wasn't interested. But when I saw that, I looked up at my mom and I said, Mom, is that real? Does that work? And my mom said, I don't know. But I literally remember being lit up by that. And then following
Wow.
following the movie thing, I think the next time was a Steven Seagal movie where he goes into a coma and all his muscles wither. And when he comes out, he's doing acupuncture and moxibustion. You know, you see these
Right.
needles and there's smoke coming off him, and he's meditating, and then he's hitting the wooden dummy. So one answer is I think it was part of my destiny to learn this. It wasn't something my family encouraged. It wasn't something that I didn't have like a new age mom who was into yoga or anything like that. So on one level, I think this is what I was born for. On another level, you know, I've had the opportunity, the gift, the challenge of being a caretaker to my mother, my brother, and my father right up until they passed. I got to hold that threshold for them. And
Wow.
with my mother, who basically turned her back on any kind of self-care and was dealing with a lot of emotional unforgiveness because her father left when she was very young. She grew up as a, you know, child of a single mother in backcountry Pennsylvania and got a lot of flack for it, you know, a lot of criticism of her mother and all that. And then my brother, while I was already in China, developed Lou Gehrig's disease. He got diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's. They thought it was Lyme's disease for a while. We're in New Jersey. That's very common. And
Sure.
when the doctors basically told him there's basically nothing for him, I came back from China and I was able to enroll him in moving to China with me and following an alternative path. And he ended up living 13 years instead of the 3 years he was given. He got married again. That's where I got initiated, man. I saw what the Eastern medicine can do. I saw what it can do. I saw his muscles get stronger, his swallowing response. I was tracking all the metrics. Everything got better.
Wow.
So I really went to China. Honestly, the first thing I learned to say in Chinese was Jiro Weisuo Bing, which means amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So I would find a teacher or a doctor. I would start to study with them, and I would say, "Can you treat Jiro Weisuo Bing?" And if the doctor looked at me like, "No way," I moved on to a new teacher, new doctor, and I collected a couple teachers who said, "Oh yeah, we can treat that. We can do that. It's just chi
Wow.
deficiency. It's just this." So anyway, that's a short version, or maybe longer than you expected, but
No, that was awesome. I too was. I think I still am inspired by that Steven Seagal, you know, recapturing his health and essence through some of the Chinese medical principles. So that's fascinating. You saw it in action, pretty young age then.
yeah, I
How,
was
how old were you?
25 when I moved over. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I came back. Yeah. So yeah, I was pretty young.
What was it like living in China?
Uh, I mean, in some ways, you know, some people look back to high school or college as their golden years or whatever when they're nostalgic. China
Yeah.
was like, I have a lot of nostalgia around it because when I first got there, I was celibate and I was vegetarian and I was, you know, not drinking anything. And I was miserable and sick for the first year I was there. Upper
Wow.
respiratory tract and then lower GI tract. It just kept bouncing back and forth. Eventually, through the help of one of my Chinese medicine mentors who said, "Hey, this city that you're living in where we are right now is the worst city for your constitution. It's damp,
Mm.
it's cold. You need to move to Kunming, Southwest China, where it's higher elevation, it's drier, there's more wind." And I moved. I also loosened my belt up on all of the things. I started to allow myself to have some of the pleasures in life again. And
Yeah.
you know, that's where I met my Taoist mentor, who I ended up staying with for the better part of 5 years. Every day from 8 a.m. until noon in the park, we were with Yang Laoshi, our teacher. And yeah, those are some of the best memories of my life because I had nothing to do but train. So, you know, I would go to the park and we would do 3-4 hours of meditation, Qigong, Tai Chi, martial applications. And then I would go have the most amazing food that you could ever have. And then I'd go in the afternoon and I would study the language and study the Taoist text. And then some afternoons I'd go to the hospital to take rounds and just, watch what was going on there. So it was amazing. I fell in love with it. I really fell in love. I miss it since quarantine and COVID. I really miss going back. It was
Yeah,
it was
because
life
otherwise you'd
changing.
be going
What's that?
you go back. Would you go back often?
Oh,
Minus the
I used to take a group of my students every year back to meet Yang Lao She and to take a trip. I used to do that every year for at least once a year. Yeah.
How was it becoming a student of his? I mean, was it difficult? Because I know
No.
my Japanese sensei, she required basically 2 months of me scrubbing her clinic before she took me seriously.
That is awesome. Did you really do that?
Oh yeah, of course.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, he did not have that kind of entry. I was introduced by a friend who was his top student, and all he did was have me. Basically, I was not allowed to participate in the training for about a week and a half or 10 days. And all I could do was hold posts, standing meditation. That was the only thing I could do. So I was either sitting quietly on the side of this little pagoda where they were training, or I was standing, in the John Zhuang upright posture, hands out, shaking, sweating. And occasionally he would come over and say, "Hey, you can sit back down and watch again." So I just basically, for 10 days, I just bounced between holding posts, but it wasn't like Shaolin where there's like a spear under my, Hui Yin or my perineum and I'm on two poles. It was challenging, but I knew he just wanted to make sure that I was serious.
Okay. Well,
So,
and that's I think that's all my teacher was trying to do as well. Is Reagan going to be a sincere student, or is he just looking to study with the most notoriety? The doctor with the most notoriety in the area, and so I think in the Eastern tradition it's different. In the West, we just write out a check and then you get educated,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
In the East, it's like, well, no, education is more of this energetic exchange where there's some mutual energy where the student and the teacher both benefit from that experience.
Yeah, and more than it's especially common now in the East where the children of these masters, these doctors, these healers are not interested in the parents in receiving the wisdom of the parents. And so there's a deep pain in a lot of these teachers' hearts because their children don't want what they have to offer. They want to program computers or work in social media or whatever is the new thing. So there is this beautiful thing where when you study with a teacher like this, the shifu, the Chinese word for master or teacher, shi means master or teacher, and fu means father. So there really is they're treating you like family. They're going to pour their gifts into you, and they want to know that you're going to do something with it. So
Yeah.
he knew that I intended to become a Chinese doctor when I went back to the States. He knew that first of all, I spoke the language. Half the Laowai, the Guai Lo spoke no Chinese, so they needed translation. So he also wanted me because I was a good translator. I could translate to the other non-Chinese students. So anyway, yeah, it was beautiful. And the thing that made me stay, because there's a dark side to the Asian lineage traditions too. They can be very protective. They can withhold knowledge from students but what he said to me, he said, "I want you to study with me every day, 6 days a week for 3 months. And during that time, you are not permitted to practice any other form of Qigong or Tai Chi or medicine. You have to just receive what I teach you, empty your cup." He said, when 3 months is done, I want you to go to a specific mountain outside the city. And I want you to just let everything that you learned before you came to me, let it flood back in, combine it with what I've taught you, train for about 2 weeks, and then come back and tell me what you figured out. What have you learned? And it blew my mind because every teacher I had been with before was like, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
And this teacher really, I felt a big opening in my heart and a lot of emotion when he shared that perspective with me. So,
Man, that is powerful. Yeah, my lineage in Seitai Shimpo, my sensei, she did not want me to practice any other style, and so after about 5 years in practice, I was I'm a budding practitioner, very successful, and I said, "There's so many cool things out there. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to launch into the world, and I want to bring Seitai Shimpo into these other groups." And my teacher said no, so I had to leave that group. It was really painful, really hard,
So
but
I
yeah, it is
really,
there.
yeah, I feel for you. It is really painful. It is really painful. Yeah.
Yeah, she's, we're still close. I mean, we still communicate, but I'm not nearly as involved in that group as I was. And so yeah, that shadow side is very difficult, especially, you and I have the energy that we want to get out to the world. We said, look, there's so many sick people out there. We have a health crisis in our country, throughout the whole world, actually. And we need this medicine to bridge that gap. And so you've done some interesting things. You're one of the few acupuncturists who does some cool biohacking. I can see your Himalayan salt lamp there. You're into nootropics. So how did you start bridging kind of these ancient traditions that are so meaningful for you? And I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. But how did you bridge that and bringing in nootropics and some of this neuroscience?
Well, I think it started out, I came back and I basically had enough education to be a doctor, but it wasn't recognizable. Like I couldn't prove the mentorships and apprenticeships that I had in China. I started the process and I realized I was going to be too difficult to go to prove my apprenticeship. So I actually, at the time, my brother's health had taken a turn for the worse, and he was doing a naturopathic protocol, and he needed me to take care of him. And I chose to accept that again. And so I was in San Diego, California, and that it was just a moment where I said, okay, well, if I'm here, there's got to be a reason, and I'm taking care of my brother, and I've given up on some projects that were in China that were very meaningful to me. But I ended up just saying, you know what, I'm just gonna go get my master's degree. So I started going to PCOM, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, and PCOM. Every Chinese medicine school has a different personality, and PCOM is academically rigorous. Their focus is on integrative medicine, and if anything, and Regan, you can chime in on this, but I had an initiation where someone shared with me that there are two ways to practice traditional Chinese medicine. One way is to practice it without the living life force or the living qi, where it's these points treat this disease, this herb formula treats these symptoms. It's very linear, it's very Western, and it works. And it's great for integrative medicine. It's great for fitting into the Western model. But then there's another way to practice the medicine, which is when you are living the medicine inside you. There's a level of intuitiveness. There's a requirement of presence and mindfulness. And there's a deeper level of really living into the truth that all disease is rooted in the spirit or in the emotions or in the karma. And that so when I heard that, I quickly realized that PCOM is very Western. And so to answer your question, I would do these presentations for my classes when I had to write papers, and I would always use the Eastern paradigm. And my teachers would say, hey, this is anatomy class. This is pathophys. You got to use the Western paradigm. So I started to I started to find the Western correlate of the Chinese theory. And I was a thorn in the side to a lot of my professors in a playful, jovial way, because all my presentations were me translating Eastern into physiology. And I found the correlates, I found all those Western correlates because I felt like the Eastern tradition had more to offer the Western than the vice versa. And so anyway, so I think that's where it started. I started to see that they're talking about the same thing. Jing, Qi, Shen, three energy centers. We got the gut brain, we got the heart brain, we got the mind. There's lots of information on that. Very clear, it's the same thing. Look at the inner smile meditation, where you produce a positive emotion, you smile, and you drop it down through the throat and the heart and the gut. Well, that's called polyvagal theory today. So I just started to see that they're talking about the same thing. They just have different vocabulary. And so I started to realize I didn't need any Eastern mystical jargon. I could teach all of this through the lens of peak performance and neuroscience. And that's pretty much what I do.
So you've, and I found years ago the same. Kai, I found that explaining things through the Eastern lens created more confusion and more barriers than it opened up pathways for healing. And so I realized, oh, well, it's easier for me to talk about the Western side anyways. My initial pathway was into the Western sciences and wanted to go into Western medical school. And then I had Hashimoto's. I got really sick myself and found that Western medicine was completely unequipped to treat autoimmunity. And so that's where I said, all right, well, let me find some answers. I worked with a naturopathic doctor and an acupuncturist. And then that led me on my journey to Hawaii. And that's where I met my sensei, Chieko Maekawa, my grandmaster, Daiichi Sorimachi, practice in Tokyo. And so that's was my introduction. And then when I came back, I was so excited to talk about Shen and Jing and Qi. And then I got glazed eyes and people like, I just want my shoulder fixed, dude. Can you relax?
Yeah.
And so, understanding that, we are in a Western world, but the beauty of it is the knowledge from Chinese medicine, what they understood and interpreted and observed that was entirely accurate 2,500 years ago is just, it's phenomenal. I mean, it makes, Hippocratic medicine and Greek medicine is powerful, Egyptian medicine, but holy smokes, the Chinese medical practice was just so far advanced. Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine is just, still blows my mind.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that story. I mean, there's the part of what I strive to do. My father passed away about a year ago, and I took care. I did some healing on him before he passed. His cancer resolved itself at 84, but he died of pneumonia right before COVID hit. But it was during that process that I put a little bit of my business on the back burner. But there was the thing I miss most about teaching seminars is that entry level, you can teach a lot of people the basics of breath work and of movement, of meditation, stress management, heart rate variability. And then when the people that love the work come back for a level 2, and now there's a little more alchemy and mysticism that they're capable and they're hungry for. And then you can have an inner group of students where you can go, because my passion and my belief is that there are methodologies and understandings of how the human mind and body and spirit work together that are solutions to pandemics that haven't hit yet. But they are right now in those endangered species of those living masters who are already on the outskirts of their own culture. They're on the outskirts, kind of like Merlin was in the time of King Arthur, where magic was receding. I feel like magic is coming back. There's a shamanic revival, there's a psychedelic revival, and I'm deeply committed to keeping alive the more alchemical Taoist practices, because I've already seen that they are sound science, and some of it we don't even have the science yet to understand how they're doing what they're doing. So
yeah, and I see the future is where we'll have more things, more devices, more technology to measure those outcomes. And then once we can measure it and we have a mathematical equation, it feels predictable. And then humans can get rid of their barriers and say, okay, this is real medicine. This is real science.
yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about your retreats, because, I think there's a lot of men out there who are suffering. And so I think you putting yourself out there as a guide and a leader, because the masculinity is also dying just as quickly as those Taoist masters are. So tell me about the work you do.
Yeah. So the pathway of power is a system that came through me, and it's not really mine. I'm standing on the shoulders, but there's these gates I recognized in the work, in my thirst for knowledge and embodiment, that there were 6 gates where they're spoken about equally in yoga, Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, but they're also show up in the modern neuroscience, right? And you mentioned adaptogens and theogens, nootropics, what we put in our mouth, powerful on our body and our mind. There's the Shadowgate, where we gotta get into the trauma that we inherited from being born into the 3-dimensional world, because it's always there in the background. And the more aware we are of it, the less it's going to run our life and incapacitate our body. There's the meditation and mindfulness gate, which is around how we manage our attention. Adult attention deficit is basically, we all have it. Attention span is shrinking as multitasking is, and I'm fascinated with the billions and billions of dollars that are spent to grab your attention and my attention through our smartphone, just like we are today, but hopefully we're broadcasting that pirate signal into the matrix and take you down a chain to get you to buy something or change your behavior. So anyway, noble movement is a way of exercising that allows you to live longer and keep your nobility, and it integrates qigong and high intensity interval training and, you know, fun things like maces and kettlebells, really functional stuff that brings the chi through the body. So anyway, I just recognize those gates are swinging both ways, and whether you're Muslim or Christian or agnostic, these gates are at work in your life, whether you know it or not. And I just want people to have a basic mastery and know how to seal these leaks, and then start to, with a few, you know, small practices, to be able to really amplify the energy. And when you work with all those gates at the same time, that's what I call the pathway of power. And it forms like a seed of life. You know, if you have these 6 gates with one central column where, and this is, you know, my retreats, we're doing breath work, we're doing meditation, we're learning how to bring our heart into coherence, to visualize the future that we want. I'm triggering people into their emotional reactions and then bringing them through practices to pull them out, so it doesn't just stay in the seminar room. You know, we're doing deep eye gazing, and we also do emotional catharsis, where we get people into their primal emotions, even when they think there's nothing there. There's almost always untapped frustration and rage, and there's usually grief. That's just part of the pain body of humanity right now. So, so the, you know, we drink tonics and we do cacao ceremony and we have fun too. On the, you know, we bond with each other. So
It's not all business. So so let's talk about these gates, because I mean, the attention gate, the gate of awareness. One of my Zen teachers, Diane Musho Diane, she used to say that you have one true freedom in life, and that's where you choose to focus your attention. And now one of my other mentors, Dan Sullivan, he considers your attention as your property. So you own your attention. So for someone to want Regan's attention, for example, well, there's going to be some exchange that's going to take place there. You know, this, like an exchange with you, is like, this is amazing because I can create some energy with a fellow healer, and then we can broadcast that to the world. So, you know, we chose this attention. But if you want to get me on social media, first of all, I don't know how to work it, but pretty soon social media needs to be paying us for our attention that we're putting on it, right?
right.
So, so yeah, that's interesting. The second one is movement, and we always say a body that stands still is a body that can't heal. So you've got to move your body. But what are the other 4 gates?
Let's see if I can. Sometimes they come out easy. So we got noble movement, right? So we're moving. Okay. We got meditation and mindfulness. I like you calling it the gate of attention. I like that. There's adaptogens and theogens and nootropics, which is essentially is nutrition. But beyond nutrition, I mean, we're just in a time where we get to have these epic supplements that are now and later. I call them now and later win-win. Like, you feel more alert and awake now, but they're preventing dementia in the future. They're putting some energy back in the adrenals. The good formulations do that. So, and then adaptogens. I mean, I just have a deep love for the upper class of Chinese herbs that are like foods that just, they build up in your body over time. There's no toxicity, and the longer you take them, the more your constitution, your personality changes. Literally, the version of me that you're getting is more available and more energized and more wise because of things like reishi and old ginseng, because I've been spending hundreds of dollars a month to put those into my body. You know, my wife has been taking reishi every day since she's been pregnant, because there's this phenomenon in Taoist fertility of reishi babies, where the whole fetus develops under the co-influence of reishi in the mother. And these babies are just zen and chill, and their hearts are protected. So anyway, love that. And then what are the gates we haven't touched on? So the Shadowgate, which is just doing that trauma work, understanding the stuff we inherited. I mean, the ancient traditions would call it ancestral healing. We're understanding
Yeah.
what came in from our parents. We've got an altar. We're repatterning our relationship with our inner child. Like that's super important to me and to, I think, to healing. The peak gate I call heart intelligence and flow states, because as I started to work with very successful people, and I recognized very quickly that what they want is to be in a state of flow, that's the holy grail. And I recognize that this flow is what the Taoists called Wu Wei, or effortless action. And what most people don't talk about is that it was never Wu Wei, it was Wei Wu Wei. So it's effort to obtain non-effort.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's out of context, Wu Wei. It's Wei Wu Wei. The Taoists were into, we train for hours so that we remember in our unconscious mind, and then we don't have to try anymore. There's no more trying because I've mastered it.
Yeah, Wu Wei is kind of like the law of attraction, right? All you got to do is put that vision board up, Kai, and then you're going to manifest everything you need in life. But yeah, I see where you're coming. So it's Wei Wu Wei.
Yeah. And what does that mean? Like getting your attention back, training your body,
Right.
Training your attention. Once you do all that, life gets pretty fun. Like challenges feel fun. And then there is, but to your point of the vision board, there can be a life, you can live a life where synchronicity is the dominant energy in your life. But there's you probably cleared some trauma before you did that. You faced the demons,
Right.
So
usually the synchronicity only happens because we see it. It's happening all the time. How much can you actually see? Because there's opportunities that are infinite. And
that's right.
And that's a thing. I mean, I love that. Wei Wu Wei is, that makes so much more sense because hormetic activities are powerful, right? Ice baths, getting in your saunas, exercising, these things all push your body just so you can actually have the ability to live without effort.
Yes.
So.
And I have a core map of applied Taoist alchemy, and one of the four pillars on the edges, like a compass, is called Le Guan, which means ecstatic perception. So the Taoists were all about ecstatic perception. Now, what does that mean? I really had fun digging this out of the classics. So, when you are on a 10-day meditation retreat and the first time you come out of that and you get to have food again, or the first time you come out of that and you get to see your friends and just celebrate, you are ecstatic about this everyday thing. When you train deep stances and you're wringing out your body through fascial stretching, and then it's over and you lay down on the mat, that's the best 10-minute lay down you've had. Like it feels like there's nowhere else you want to be. So I think the Taoists were really good at training in ways that the opposite side of the training was ecstasy. Like be celibate and retain your seed for 30 days. And then what is it like the first time you get to make love to your wife after that? Oh my God. Versus every day, and it loses polarity. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value to what would the Stealing Fire guys would call it, hedonic engineering, where you have periods where you party and you relax and you celebrate, and then you have periods where you're focused on your disciplines, and you allow that to be like an ebb and flow that's conscious rather than becoming an addict to those things.
Well, how many people are addicts to their day-to-day routine, right? Hey, I wake up at a certain time, I eat breakfast at this time, this is when I go on my walk, this is when I do that. And, from what you're saying is sometimes you got to break free of the routine to actually appreciate the routine. The mundanity of the day-to-day life can really be some of the most depressing, stressful, non-soulful work you do. And that's where we have to go on vacations and get away from it. And then most people go on vacations and they go in subconscious mode, and there's no intention around it. But I can completely relate to that experience of coming back into the fold and experiencing society and life after pulling myself away from it in some of the retreats I've done. So
Mhm.
So that's powerful. So how often are you hosting these, and are you actually doing your retreats live now, or what's it look like for
We
you?
I don't have any on the calendar right now. But I used to do two retreats a year here in the mountains of Southern California. And they're pretty small. They're only like 30 to 50 people, 4 or 5 days long. And um I don't have a new date for those, but that's on the horizon as things are thawing out in California with quarantine. Um it's
Right.
funny, and I'm very grateful that the retreat centers, that now that quarantine's lifted, they are booked solid for like a year and a half, because all the retreats that couldn't be booked were
Right.
waitlisted, and now they're in the queue. So I'm just grateful to see the influx of money and people coming back to the mountains and using these natural spots. But I don't have any on the calendar right now, but they're coming down the line.
And for those of you, because this, a lot of people will love hearing this episode for years. That's the cool thing about a podcast is people hear it in a week from now, in a year from now, in 4 years from now. And so I think this is one of the most powerful things that I've learned in 2020 in the lockdown era, is that humans meeting with other humans is an energetic exchange that's very difficult to match over a screen. And so I would encourage everyone to look at Kai's group and get out there and participate, because he's got some true wisdom that he can share. And so what are the mistakes you would say that most men are making when it comes to finding their purpose, finding out who they are and their masculinity?
I think the greatest challenge that men face is the fear of vulnerability.
Mm,
Is the idea that if they show their anger, if they show their sadness, if they show their grief, that they will somehow lose love or approval. And
yeah.
because of that, they're living in a very narrow range of emotional bandwidth, which incapacitates the immune system. It also gives them no leverage to make changes in their life, because no one has taught them how to properly cathart their emotions. No one has taught them how to skillfully, in a way that hurts no one and loses no love, to discharge energy that's built up in the emotional system of the body. And I think once men are able to get with that primal scream, once they're able to drop to their knees and cry, they're amazed to find that not only does it only take, just a minute or two to get those through those emotions, as we know from the neuroscience around the Dalai Lama and around children, but they're so much more alive. Their face is more trustworthy. They have more liberated energy. And it's not, there's a science and a methodology, but it's pretty simple. Like, anybody listening to this, go out to the woods and just make the loudest sound that you can make, and aim it at whatever you may be frustrated at in your life, and don't stop until you drop to your knees, and
Mm,
then just be still. Just be still. And sometimes there's a little bit of a cry. Sometimes there's a laughter at, like, oh my God, why have I been holding this in? This feels so good. How come I've been holding back from this?
wow.
Sometimes, and very often, there's an insight of a conversation that needs to be had, of something that needs to be cleaned up. So I'd say that's the core. And I'd say it's pretty true of women as well, although they're slightly different energetically with how they sit on those emotions, but it's pretty similar. With, one of my mentors, Regan, he said this, that I always stuck with me. He said, in response to someone in the seminar saying, "This is weird. This is weird." He'd say, "You know what's weird to me? That the only place in our society that it's acceptable to make these noises is in the ER. It's in the intensive care unit. If you walk
Mm,
around a hospital and you hear the wailing and the yelling, that is all the unexpressed emotion, and the only safe place that they could do it, the only place that they could find, was in that room. That their
wow.
soul had to speak to them through an accident or through an emergency, because they're not listening to that." So he goes, "I think it's weird to get cancer and die of cancer. I think that's weird. I'd much rather make these noises and get this out of my body so my body can heal itself." So
Wow. That's powerful. I mean, vulnerability, it is. I grew up on a farm, on a ranch. And so there wasn't a lot of chance to express fear. I mean, I was freaked out. I had a 2,000-pound bulls, running after me and trying to get cows, I mean, it was just like, as a young teenager, sporting a mullet, it was, kind of a hard place to show a lot of vulnerability. And I think it probably took about 10 years of just working through with, therapists, and working through it with some of my Zen teachers, even my Japanese teacher, just to be able to express a little bit of that. But it's kind of this hardening that happens in society that, that I've been talking to some of the male patients and my good friends. There is a drive in society to always be better and to be competitive and to be at your edge and find the flow state. I think I think you nailed it. I mean, vulnerability is key. What would you say the reason is that men are unable to show vulnerability?
Well, most of them are not hanging out with another group of guys that do that. I mean, traditionally, I really have a deep love for indigenous culture, because most of those cultures had rituals where the men would handle this stuff, and it was normal, whether it's the haka or ceremonial wrestling. Like those are really powerful ways that the men would deal with stuff. So I think number one is it's not in their circle of friends. It's not, no one's going to bring that to them in their normal social interaction.
Yeah.
Number two, most men were more rewarded for anger than anything else. But if their anger got to the level that they broke something or they got in a fight at school, they lost the love of their parents. And as a child, when you lose the love of your parents, that's equal to death in terms of the way the human nervous system feels that. And so you learn really quick, if I get angry, I will die. I will lose love. I mean, ultimately, it goes back to being kicked out of the tribe and isolated, that in our nervous system. So, and then grief, of course, sadness or grief, if we cry and it doesn't get us what we want, and, boys don't cry anyway, and suck it up, then we don't get love for that. So now we grow up, and subconsciously, if we don't do the shadow work, we believe if we're too angry, we're either going to hurt somebody, we're going to lose love. We might go to jail. We might have consequences to pay. And if we're sad, we'll be judged as less than. And even if we didn't get judged as less than, we won't get what we want. Crying won't get me what we want. Now, the truth on the other side of that, for the people that are listening, the truth is, on the other side of a good rage, a good anger, is liberation, is chi flowing through your body. Every emotion has a chemical equivalent. And when you're sitting on a complex of unexpressed emotions, that's where the organs get jammed up. That's where the immune system gets impaired. That's where tumors start to form. I'm 100% that this Louise Hay stuff and the Chinese medicine with their emotions, it's not 100% accurate, but it is 100% accurate that stuck emotions will lead to physical disease. No question. It's fact. It's just there. So anyway, so men then, even if they knew that intellectually, what is it going to take for them to pull the car over at the park and find the trail where they're not conscious of who's listening to them? Are the police going to come and get me? Is someone going to come ask me if I'm okay? All of that shit. Even the guys that I coach, I still sometimes need to say, we have a 30-minute call. You find a place that you can make the noise right now, because I care about you too much. But Kai, no, dude, get in your car, drive 5 minutes down the road. Let's do it. I'll talk you through the whole way. And they do it, and they've never not been in a better place after that. So,
man,
yeah,
I think that's powerful. Yeah. Those releases are so important. And so what are the phases? I mean, because part of what you coach men on are the phases of life. And so what are what are your phases of life? How do you interpret that?
What do you mean by phases of life?
I mean, you help men go through all phases of life. I'm imagining adolescence, adulthood.
Okay. I mean, I sometimes think in the, Taoist medicine wheel. I'm trying to find a place to bite off a chunk that has value. So like, here's a cycle that has really been beneficial to me, is that You being familiar with Chinese medicine to understand about this idea of open, close, and pivot, which
Sure.
is from the Shanghan Lun. And it's about how disease processes go into the body. But from a perspective for everyone to be able to use, you can think of your life as having a constant cycle of life, death, life, life, death, life, open, close, pivot. And a lot of times what happens is that we as men and as modern humans, we avoid the death cycle. We don't want to go into the loss. We don't want to feel the emotions. And so
Yeah.
we get out of relationships right before it gets interesting, because we're not willing to be vulnerable. And then what do? We get the same partner again with the same dynamic because we didn't do the work in the first one. We never looked at what was being asked to be looked at. And I think if there's, and in a way, if you just go to the model of the 4, which has been super valuable for me, looking at the medicine wheel of, springtime is a phase of our life where everything's working. We have a lot of energy, we have a lot of health, we have a lot of money, we're implementing our ideas. But naturally, just like in every day, in the cycle of the sun and the day, and in every year, there's going to come a fall, an autumn, where it's time to reflect. It's time to let go of what's not working. It's time to look in the metal mirror, the reflection of the mirror, to cut away what's not working and to harvest the fruits. So, some of us are good at that. Then there's the winter time, like your evening routine and sleeping and death and loss, and being able to embrace it. Like one of the things with my family is I got so much better at the death process. In the beginning, I was holding on so tight, being the doctor, trying to fight for their health right up until the last breath. And I recognized that because I wasn't good at the winter, I was losing out on my quality of time. So there's also this ability to recognize when any area of your life is in the death process in the winter, and can you surrender to that? Can you let that grief move through you and almost celebrate it? Like it's so, here's an example. One of my friends, you'd love this guy, Regan. He's a master of Chinese tea, young guy. And he said that there's one day, he's such a philosopher and a poet. And he says, there I am looking at my son, and he's just so beautiful. And then I started to cry because I realized that someday he's going to die. And even if he doesn't die before me, he's going to have to watch me die. And he's like, and he's crying. He's like, and I just felt the preciousness of life in that moment. And like, we don't like to look at death. We don't like to look at loss. And so we miss the lessons and we navigate it inefficiently. And then of course, we're pretty good at the springtime with new ideas, launches, new love and relationships, and being able to ride those phases of the seasons, which exist in our relationships. They exist through the day and through the year. If we know how to skillfully surrender and surf those different energies, we know what foods to eat, we know what practices to do. It's almost like a woman syncing up with her menstrual cycle, which has different practices for different parts of the month, different ways to be in peak performance. Working with women, helping them sync up their cycle and know what type of exercise, breathing, food to do in the different phases of their moon cycle is a game changer for most women entrepreneurs. Really powerful. So, but we have those cycles too, and that's kind of how I work with them.
No, that's powerful. Do you work with women as well, Kai?
I do. I definitely have. I wear a hat as a business coach for entrepreneurs that are really making a difference. I have a program called Impact Alchemy, and it's about the business skills, the enrollment skills, mainly for coaches and healers. But for women, I learned a lesson a long time ago that I kept seeing this pattern where women would try to follow the peak performance advice that's out there, the cold showers, intermittent fasting, ketosis, high intensity interval training. And it works for them about half the time when their hormones are favorable to that. But the other half of the time, they need a very different type of peak performance regime. And I've finally I only got informed of that in the last couple of years. And then my wife does that work as well. She's a Chinese doctor, Korean, 4th generation, and she works with women. It's almost like she's the female equivalent of what I do. She does fertility and wild feminine expression. So
Cool.
syncing their moon cycle and getting in touch with the power of their lower dantian, the womb, meditating these different meditations depending on where in the cycle they're at, but also this wild feminine of really like owning their fierce warrior side. So
Wow. You guys are great. Tai Chi, you're the yin yang. I mean,
yeah.
right there. That's beautiful. So, one of the things that you've got coming up is you're going to be a father. I mean, was that a big decision for you, or what are you most looking forward to in that next chapter of life?
It wasn't a big decision. The timing of it was we chose to wait until we were married, and I wanted her to feel fully claimed, and I didn't want her to have. She has a daughter from a previous relationship that we love tremendously, but I really wanted her to have. She wasn't married before, and I wanted her to have that. So it was a very conscious decision.
Yeah.
On another story, it's kind of funny. Like we conceived this child in a moment where we had stopped trying, and literally, Regan, I was on my deathbed from COVID.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get a positive test that time. I did at a later time, but man, COVID initiated me. In my opinion of my self-knowledge, I had COVID 3 times from March.
3 times?
3 times. And the worst time, there was just a night where I said, Grace, I know I'm not going to die, but it feels like I'm going to die. And I just need to be reminded of how good life can feel. So we made love. And she always makes the joke about how, there's this phenomena in nature that when a being believes it's going to die, it takes its most vital essence and puts it into the seed. Cause it's like, this is it.
Yeah.
Get everything we got to go in there. So I can't wait to see this little boy and how strong he's going to be. And what am I most looking forward to? Really, to just transparently is this is the continuation of my lineage. My name is going to go forward with this child, which is my father passed, and my wife was a big part of helping me with that. And there's been a lot of signs that there's a relationship between my father's soul and the soul of this child, that there's some type of continuity there. And it's exciting that I'm going to get to maybe see my father again in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just metaphorical, that I'm going to get to carry on the Van Bodhi name. And I think even more, it's just a celebration of my wife and I and our love for each other, to see like a life that we create together. I think it's deep. It's already deepened our connection and our love. So
I love that. That's powerful. I appreciate you sharing. And so if people want to work with you, I mean, we're, coming up on the end of the show, and I've got about 3 hours more of conversation that we could have together. So we're definitely have to catch up offline, but tell people how they can work with you. What's the best next step they can take?
So if you go to the website, pathwayofpower.com, if you want to work with me right away, there's a work with me form that you can fill out. Let me know a little bit about what you're up to and what you're working on in the world and what kind of support you need. And then if there's a fit, I can follow up. But there's also a power leak discovery assessment where you answer about 8 to 12 minutes of questions, because it's not just it's not like a fake quiz to get leads. It's a real quiz, and it will generate a 5-minute training for you based on what gate of power you likely are either leaking from or have the most possibility to benefit from. And then that will also bring you into a sequence where you'll get a better idea of my work, and you'll get a better idea of where you're at. And then there's an option in that email sequence to get on a call with me.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then Anne asked, what's your wife's website?
Her website currently, I believe, is Idlewild Mountain Medicine. Goodness gracious. I don't.
We'll find it out.
Yeah.
Don't worry. We'll post it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so exciting, Kai, and I really appreciate all the work you're doing, the healing you're bringing to the planet. Appreciate the similar parallel universe that you're on. Love to keep this connection going. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience before you part?
Yeah, I would just what I remind myself of every day is that your best self is never more than 5 to 15 minutes away. If you're just
Mm,
willing to take that cold shower, to do the 5 minutes of breath work, to do the jumping jacks, like don't stay stuck longer than is necessary.
mm,
Excuse yourself, take a time out, move your body, go get in the car. Give yourself the gift of interrupting your state and then deciding how you're going to show up.
love it.
And I would just say that, like, no matter how hard it feels right now, it's amazing putting on some music and dancing, moving your body, pick up your kettlebell, your mace, whatever it is. Just don't stay stuck for longer than necessary.
Man, that's powerful. So there you heard it. Your best self is only 15 minutes away. So that's
Love that.
powerful. Awesome. Thanks so much, Kai. Everyone listening today, please forward this to your friends, family, loved ones. We appreciate you guys being part of this healthy self community, and we will see you next week.
Awesome show, guys. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Kai. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for the amazing insights. We'll be back, everybody, same time, same place next week. Love y'all. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.